Hello and welcome to our fourth lecture on the introduction to Islamic religion. In the last lecture, I focused on the events that led to the birth of Islam in the Jahiliyyah period, in the period of paganism in the Arabian Peninsula, the prophecy of the Prophet Muhammad, and so on and so forth. And now that we've finished the more historical perspective on the issue, I'd like to focus on, again, it's just an introduction, on the comparison, some observations on the comparison between Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. It's very important to do that, I believe, because it helps us understand the uniqueness of Islam in one way, and of course, from another perspective, the similarities between Islam and the other great monotheistic religions. The first observation that I'd like to share with you is concerning the concept of revelation. All three main monotheistic religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, have at their core the concept of revelation, the revelation of God to man, this way or another. It's obvious in the case of Judaism. We all heard about Mount Sinai, the Moses going to Mount Sinai, and the people of Israel receiving the Ten Commandments, and so on and so forth. So the story of revelation is one important formative aspect in the creation, in the birth of Judaism. Of course, in Christianity, it's all about revelation. God himself reveals himself by the words of Jesus. In different Christianities, Jesus himself is considered to be God, he's divine, and therefore, of course, it is, I think, the utmost idea of God revealing himself as a man. So obviously, within Christianity, regardless of the different denominations or different beliefs, revelation is a central concept. And of course, in Islam, the revelation of the angel Gabriel giving Muhammad the first verses of the Quran, of the great book of Revelation. In addition to that, all three great monotheistic religions have a holy book at the center. Judaism, the Bible, the first revelation. And I'm referring to the Bible in the narrower sense of the books of Moses, the Tanakh, as Jews would call it. And then we have the Christian belief in the revelation, and at the center stands the New Testament. Obviously, a book of different revelations, not all of it, but much of it. And of course, in Islam, we have the same concept. The revelation of God is recorded in the book that is called by the Muslims the Quran, and we're going to deal with that later. My third point now is no longer a theological one, as the former. I'd like to focus on the historical perspective of the birth of the three great religions. Judaism was basically born in the Holy Land. This is the story of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Okay, so one may say that perhaps the origin should be located somewhere outside in Mesopotamia, because the first revelation to Abraham is actually outside the land of Israel, but that's just the beginning. The core of the revelation in the time of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is in the land of Israel. And then the people of Israel leave the land, the Holy Land, and they come back, and the Jewish religion is actually formed and formulated mainly during the first and the second temple periods. So that is definitely a story of the land of Israel, the Holy Land. In the case of Christianity, it's even clearer, because Jesus comes from the Galilee. He travels all over the country. He ends his life on the cross in Jerusalem. It's totally a story of the land of Israel, even though when we consider Christianity as a religion in the Byzantine era, the 4th, 5th, 6th centuries, Most of its concepts were formed in other places outside this country. They were formed in Antioch, they were formed in Rome, they were formed in other places too. But the core is indeed, the essence is indeed the land of Israel. It's different with Islam. Islam was not born in the Holy Land. Islam was definitely born somewhere else in the Arabian Peninsula. Yes, the Muslims took over the Holy Land. That happens in the year 638 with the occupation of the land of Israel by the early Muslims. And then the religion of this country became, just like any other country, the Islamic religion. But it's important to note that Islam was born somewhere else, not in the Holy Land, even though the Holy Land is very important in the Islamic concept, yet it's not where Islam was born. So this is an interesting observation on the historical, from the historical perspective. From the practical point of view, Islam and Judaism are very similar in the sense that much of the core of Islam and Judaism has to do with practical commandments. Jews as well as Muslims have a huge amount of laws dealing with every aspect of life. From the moment you wake up through the day until you go to sleep, you're surrounded by commandments. Most of these commandments are oral traditions, yet they surround the Jew as well as the Muslim, down to the minute details of how exactly should one wash in Islam. Wash his face before going to pray. You stop this point or that point. All these details are being taken care of in Islam. In Christianity, of course, this is quite different. Christianity has its commandments. They're basically the same commandments that we find in the Bible. It's the moral aspect of Judaism that Christianity shares. You shall not kill someone. You should not steal. You should behave in a proper manner. You should believe in God. All these things are commandments, but they're more of a theological values. I'd say that perhaps in Christianity, it's more important not what do I do, but it's rather what I believe in. When in Judaism and Christianity, perhaps at least in antiquity, it was more important to ask, what do I do and how exactly do I perform my daily duties? So in a sense, Christianity is more spiritualized than the more practical aspects of Judaism and Islam in antiquity. And I must stress this point. I'm talking about Islam, Christianity, and Judaism at the origin, at the beginning. Things today are much more complex than the way I present them, but I don't wish to get to the modern aspects of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. One important aspect has to do with the appeal of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism to other nations. Let me start by saying that Islam and religion are international religions. Judaism was born as a national religion. Let me explain. Judaism was the religion of the people of Israel, period. You can join the people of Israel, you can become a Jew, but you also become a member of the Jewish nation, of the nation of the Israelites. Islam and Christianity are not associated with any specific nation. In the case of Christianity, we have Christians in Belgium as well as in Egypt. And there's nothing common between the two nations, except for the fact that they believe in the same Christian belief. The same with Islam. There are Muslims in Pakistan, in Turkey, in Israel, everywhere, and they do not belong to any one nation. And this has consequences, for instance, with regards to celebrating the holidays. The holidays in Judaism are basically, well, agricultural holidays. We all know that. But eventually, the way they are portrayed in the Bible, the Jewish holidays are national holidays in the sense that they celebrate events that happened to the Jewish people. Pesach, Passover, is the celebration of the Exodus. Tabernacles, Sukkot, that's the celebration of the journey of the Israelites in the desert after the Exodus, and so on and so forth. Purim, that's the feast that it's the latest feast in the Bible. This is the story of the Jews in the Persian kingdom who were saved from the evil hands of Haman in Persia. All these are events that took place that happened to the Jewish people. These are national. This is a national history translated into theology. But when you refer to Christianity and Islam, well, Islam is very simple. There are only two holidays, and they're not associated with any specific event that has to do with any specific nation. We'll refer to the holidays later. In Christianity, well, every day is a celebration because every day there's here and there's a saint or that, but I'm referring to the main feasts. Think about the Nativity, for instance, or Easter. Basically, these events happen to a certain Jew named Jesus. That is true. But obviously in Christianity, the interpretation here is much deeper. Jews do not celebrate the birth of Jesus because he was a Jew who was born. They celebrate it because he is conceived to be the Messiah. And the Messiah is a general concept that can be adopted by people all over the world. It's a general human concept.
And this is extremely important because at this point we understand why Islam and Christianity are missionary religions,
meaning the aim is to spread the belief in the one God, the way they conceive it. Nothing stops it. When you refer to people in Egypt, in Syria, in China, you can spread the word of Islam or Christianity. There's nothing to stop you. But when you talk about Judaism, these ideas in Judaism are not general concepts. They have to do with a certain nation. It's a bit more difficult to share these unique idiosyncratic ideas with people who have nothing to do with the history of the Jewish people. So in part, it's not the entire explanation, I admit, it's more complex, but in part that may explain the fact that generally Judaism is a very small religion, even today, but also in the past, as opposed to Christianity and Islam that are international religions, worldwide religions. It's a striking fact, it's a striking difference between the two religions, and I think it has to do with the national nature and international nature of the different religions. Now, all three religions also have their own calendars, as I mentioned several times already. Let me say something about the calendar, and we'll start with Judaism. The calendar in Judaism begins at the beginning with the creation of the world. This is the beginning of the calendar till this day in Jewish tradition. many Jews still use it today. Orthodox Jews, believers, they use this calendar today. In Christianity, the beginning of the calendar is with the birth of Jesus, the birth of the Messiah. In Islam, the beginning of the calendar is in the year 622, as I mentioned in our latest lecture. 622, the Hijrah, the immigration, the journey of Muhammad and his followers from Mecca to Medina to establish the new religion in Medina. The calendar itself is also different. In Christianity, we use the solar calendar, meaning the length of the year depends on the solar movement, the sun's movement in the sky, and its length is 365.25 days, 365 and a quarter. That's the length of the year in Christianity. In Judaism, the calendar is a lunar calendar based on the length of the year determined by the moon. As it happens, the length of the year, if you look at the moon's movements, is just 354 days. So it's 11 days and a quarter shorter than the solar year, meaning every year in Judaism there's a gap of 11 days. And if you don't correct it, the celebration of Pesach, for instance, or any other feast, would simply drift along the year. And eventually you'll find yourself celebrating the feast of the spring, Pesach, in the winter and in the summer, and you don't want that to happen. And therefore, Judaism introduced intercalation, meaning adding a month every 2 years or so. That keeps the feasts on their location. In Islam, it's a bit different. Islam has only a lunar calendar. There's no intercalation. And of course, the result is quite simple. The feasts, the main events in the calendar of Islam, simply shift along the year. I'll give you an example. Muslims fast every year for 1 month, called the month of Ramadan. Ramadan is held, say, in the summer now. Next year, 11 days. Next year, another 11 days. Eventually, you'll end up celebrating Ramadan during the winter, the fall, autumn, and so on and so forth. Basically, that means that the dates of the feasts are not the same every year. Why did Muslims decide to stick to the lunar calendar when they can simply choose what the Jews did and do intercalation and keep the feasts on the same, roughly on the same dates? I'll tell you why, but you'll have to wait for our next lecture.